So what is international project management? It's just kind of the same as any project management, but now we're thinking about an international scale. So thinking about using resources and teams on a larger international scale, attaining the project goal like a normal project, but now we're not just domestic, we're on a global scale. And I think a common misconception is that it's only for large businesses or organizations, but it's actually a lot of smaller businesses engage in international project management as well. So an example, you might think of an Australian cafe, might have a barista who's from Korea, or coffee beans from Sweden, or a coffee machine from Italy. So that, or maybe not on daily basis, engaging in international cultures. There's still international project management, even in those small things. So thinking about some of the advantages of international project management, I've outlined 3 here. The first one is access to better global resources. So on the international market, you have access to better resources, both in terms of physical resources and workers as well. So on the international scale, you have access to more niche experts in fields that can be very helpful for your project if you need those kind of people on your team, those technical experts. But also access to global resources that might be cheaper, might be hard to find domestically or hard to mine domestically. Having that global market gives you more options, more access to different resources. It reduces the overall risk of a project. So by having your establishments and organizations based around the world, any impact of a local effect, maybe such as a flood or a military coup, any of these local disasters will not impact your entire project. And that's important. It builds resilience on the global scale to any of these disasters. It's also helpful in the recovery process. You imagine part of your organization might be lost to some domestic incident. You have other organizations that are there, already established, still functioning, to help rebuild a part of the organization that was lost. Another one is promotes innovation. So you imagine a team of culturally diverse people with different ideas and ideologies. It can be a great way to promote different thoughts, the different ideas of how to make this project work. And it really avoids that group thinking that might be there in domestic projects when everyone's kind of on the same background, always kind of on the same page together. And that's just a different way to come up with new ideas and new innovations for the project. However, there are some disadvantages with international project as well. It's not just the best thing in the world. So as I just said, there are cultural differences. And these can actually promote some difficulties in communication. It can promote some distrust between team members. And it's important to establish and understand how to relate to each other, especially in culturally sensitive issues. It's important to understand how to manage that, how to ensure that there's clear communication between the whole team, and ensure that everyone can trust each other, even though there might be some differences between them. There's also some economic and financial risk. I think the 2 major ones are currency risks and taxations. So currency risk, thinking about exchange rate, it's dynamic, it's fluctuating, and you've got to be prepared for that. You've got to understand that these things aren't static and they might change on you, and that can really affect the profits and costs of a business. And there's also differences in taxation when you go overseas, and different countries have different laws and regulations. And that could be a benefit, but it's also just another layer of complexity and different sets of requirements you're going to have to adhere to that you might not necessarily be used to. 5 additional resources. The first one talks about the construction industry and how the US relates to different construction industries overseas, and highlight some differences. A bit interesting. The second one talks about some of the international project management factors and environments that project managers work in, kind of what's in your control, what's out of your control, and how to best plan to mitigate some of those factors that are out of your control. The third paper talks about the relationships between an individual project and the greater portfolio. And it's interesting because this paper looks at marketing and how to actually manage marketing on an international project, which I thought was interesting as well. The fourth one talks about the relationship between quality management and international project management, focusing on some of the human-based factors, the technology-based factors that can be used to make project management better, which I thought was nice. And the last paper talks about different ways to manage stakeholders, international stakeholders that are, often very diverse, very different beliefs, and how to best manage them and make sure transparent, and incorporate them in the process of your project. So in conclusion, I think international project management can be a really great tool, really beneficial, but it does need to be managed well. There are levels of complexity that make things hard, but if you manage them well, there's a lot of benefits to come out of international project management, and I think we'll see more international project management in the future for the years to come. Thanks for listening.